Premier wondered what was going on all of a sudden. Ilhelm said that Deculein had been completely unpredictable throughout the entire conference, and that he didn't understand it at all. He demanded to know why Deculein was acting that way, risking the anger of the other mage houses. Ilhelm glared, his eyes burning with contempt. "Are you seriously afraid of the Scarletorn?" he asked. Prim's thoughts raced in shock at the suggestion. Ilhelm continued, reminding Deculein that he had once declared his intent to wipe out the Scarletorn, that he had insisted they were an inferior race unworthy of living on that land. He added that Deculein's paper condemning the Scarletorn was still stored in the university archives. Meanwhile, Deculein remained silent. Then, with a cruel smirk, Ilhelm questioned whether Deculein's sudden change of heart had anything to do with his new research assistant, who just so happened to be a Scarletorn. Alan slammed the table. "You're going too far," he shouted. "Stop insulting Deculein." Deculein calmly wiped his face. "Relax, Alan," he said. "I'm fine." Turning to Ilhelm, he remarked, "You're like rotten cheese from the brain down, so it's no surprise that you'd think like that." He added, "It's understandable that someone like you wouldn't get it." Ilhelm's glare intensified, but then he suddenly flashed an odd smile. "Right." Before leaving, he mentioned that there were only 6 months left until Deculein's research presentation, or was it 3? He challenged Deculein, saying, "We'll see how long you can keep this up before your vile blabber is exposed." With that final jab, he walked away, his unpleasant stare lingering until the end. Prim's hands trembled as she reflected on Deculein's actions. Even at the risk of offending the others, he had actually sided with the Scarletorn. Is this really Deculein? She found it hard to believe. Staring at him, her mind reeled. She recalled Locke's words and wondered silently, was what he said really true? The next day, before leaving Barrett, Deculein met Lalek, one of the greatest craftsmen of their time, and commissioned a staff from him. System notification. Side quest complete. Localock staff. Conditions for completion. Possessing sufficient fame or infamy. Being a kind-hearted person or one who had reformed. Offering the finest materials that could intrigue Lalek. Visiting at least twice. Reward. +1 store currency. A staff crafted by Lalek. Lalek was such a renowned craftsman that even the previous Deculein had supposedly visited him. In the process of commissioning the staff, an unknown quest had been cleared. On the train heading back to the Empire, Deculein happened to be in the same carriage as Bedin. Throughout the journey, Bedin made no effort to hide his hostility. Fortunately, the tension never escalated into anything serious. As he turned a page in his book, Deculein reflected that this long journey was finally coming to a close. The group arrived quietly and safely at the platform. Alan stretched loudly as he stepped off the train, letting out an exaggerated groan. The landscape felt heavier than when they had first arrived. Thick snow blanketed the platform, and through the swirling flurries, Alan exclaimed that they only had to transfer once more. "When will we finally see something besides snow?" he muttered. Deculein, however, was focused on a figure standing ahead. A woman in white armor and a black cape. Julie, flanked by her identically dressed knights. As he approached, she continued to stare at him. With measured steps, he closed the distance between them. "Julie," he greeted simply. She nodded. "I heard you were attacked. I'm glad you're all right." Her voice carried its usual tone, but there was a new firmness to it, frail, yet unwavering. Deculein thanked her. He assumed news about Veyron must have reached them, though he wasn't sure how the story had spread. Many seemed displeased that he had been the sole survivor. Julie mentioned the article she had read about the incident. It claimed that Deculein and Vaughn had worked together to rescue the survivors. Deculein remained still. Without knowing which article she had seen, he couldn't afford careless words. Julie, however, had only one question. She wanted to know, what had Veyron been like? Deculein met her gaze, carefully weighing his response. He had originally planned to tell her everything, that Veyron had tried to kill him, that their battle had led to the tragic outcome. But now, standing before her, he realized he couldn't. The truth would shatter her. Julie would blame herself, as if Veyron's sins were her own. For her sake, he decided to bury it, even if it meant earning the hatred of others. The screech of train wheels cutting through the silence gave him a moment to think. A station staff member announced that the 4th train heading to the Empire was now boarding, instructing ticket holders to proceed immediately. Deculein couldn't bring himself to lie outright. Instead, he finally answered. Vaughn was quite emotional. Julie inhaled deeply, then bowed her head. Thank you, she said softly. We'll go to Vaughn now. She wished him a good rest before turning away with her knights. Deculein stood there for a moment, lost in thought. I'm a fool too, he admitted to himself, unable to even untangle the emotions in my own heart. Alan, watching them leave, muttered in frustration. Those people are so unreasonable. Even though we were victims too, they look at us like we're the ones at fault. Deculein dismissed it with a sigh. Don't mind them. They're just fools. Unexpectedly, Sylvia's voice cut in, unsteady and hesitant. Why did you hold back? Deculein turned to her, puzzled. What do you mean? Sylvia didn't answer. Instead, she rummaged through her bag, pulled out a book, and thrust it at him. This is my way of returning the favor, she said abruptly. Deculein took the book, bewildered. But before he could respond, Sylvia turned and dashed away. Alan peered at the book. What is it? Deculein shook his head. I don't know. The entire journey had been exhausting. Right now, all he wanted was to rest. We should hurry back, he said. Alan sighed. Yeah, let's go.